The city of Velara Prime burned for the 18th night in a row. Ambassador Lyra stood at the window of the underground bunker, watching the orange glow paint the sky. Another district gone. Another million of her people turned to ash. She was old by Velari standards. Her blue skin had faded to pale gray, and her four eyes no longer saw as clearly as they once did. But she could see enough. She could see her world dying. The Kreth Dominion had arrived 18 months ago. They came with demands. Surrender your resources, your technology, your freedom. The Velari Collective had refused. They were a peaceful species. They had never known war. They believed in negotiation, in reason, in the basic goodness of intelligent beings. The Kreth had laughed at them. Now the Kreth battleships hung in orbit like dark moons. They bombed cities at random. Not to conquer. They could have done that in the first week. They bombed to teach a lesson. They bombed to show other species what happened when you said no to the Dominion. Lyra turned away from the window. In the center of the bunker, a young diplomat named Torvik worked at a communication console. He was barely an adult, his blue skin still bright, his eyes still full of hope that had no right to exist. "Is it ready?" Lyra asked. Torvik nodded. His hands trembled as he made the final adjustments. "The signal will reach the outer sectors within days. But Ambassador, we don't know what's out there. We've never explored beyond the charted regions. I know. There could be nothing. Or there could be something worse than the Kreth." Lyra placed her thin hand on Torvik's shoulder. "My child, look outside. What could be worse than this?" She pressed the button herself. The distress beacon shot into space, carrying their desperate plea in every language the Velari knew. It spoke of bombardment, of genocide, of a peaceful people facing extinction. It begged for help. It promised nothing in return because the Velari had nothing left to give. Then they waited. 6,000 light years away, the signal reached Earth. Admiral Kim Do-yoon was eating dinner with his daughter when his communicator buzzed. He ignored it. These days with his family were rare, and he had promised to be present. But the communicator buzzed again. And again. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway of his small apartment in Seoul. The message was marked with the highest priority code he had ever seen. 20 minutes later, he stood in the United Earth Defense Force Command Center, surrounded by generals, politicians, and scientists. They played the Velari message on the main screen. The translation software struggled with some concepts, but the meaning was clear enough. "They're being slaughtered," Admiral Kim said quietly. General Morrison, the American representative, shook his head. "We don't know anything about this region of space. We don't know these Velari. We don't know these Kreth. This could be a trap." "It could be," Kim agreed. "Or it could be exactly what it appears to be. A genocide. The political implications are secondary." Kim's voice cut through the room like a blade. "We received a distress call. People are dying. That is the only fact that matters." The debate continued for 3 hours. Some argued for caution. Some argued for a small reconnaissance mission. Some argued that Earth should stay out of alien conflicts entirely. Admiral Kim listened to all of it. Then he stood up. "I'm taking the Third Fleet," he announced. "Those who wish to join may join. Those who wish to stay may stay. But I will not stand here debating while children are being burned alive." He walked out. Within the hour, 12 battlecruisers, 40 destroyers, and the flagship Indomitable had volunteered for the mission. Captain Park Yuna commanded the destroyer Relentless. She was 42 years old, with short black hair and a scar across her jaw from a training accident 15 years ago. She had joined the Defense Force because her grandmother had survived the Pacific quakes of 2089. Her grandmother had told her stories about how people helped each other during those dark days, how strangers became family, how humanity showed its best face in its worst moments. Yuna had spent her life trying to live up to those stories. She gathered her crew in the relentless cargo bay. There were 200 of them, men and women from every nation on Earth. They looked at her with trust in their eyes. They were scared, she could see that. But they were also ready. "I won't lie to you," she said. "We don't know what we're flying into. We don't know if we'll come back. The enemy has over 200 ships. They've conquered 47 species. They've never lost a war." She paused, looking at their faces. "But they've never fought us." The crew cheered. It wasn't a loud cheer. These were professionals, not movie soldiers. But it was genuine. Lieutenant Han Ji-woo stood at the back of the crowd. She was 28, born in Seoul, raised in the shadow of the Great Reconstruction. Her brother had died in the Mars insurrection 5 years ago. She had joined the fleet the day after his funeral. She didn't cheer with the others. She simply checked her weapons console one more time, making sure every system was ready. The Kreth liked to bomb civilians. She was going to teach them what happened when civilians fought back. The fleet entered FTL. Estimated arrival 6 days. On Valara Prime, Torvik monitored the communication systems. Days passed. Then a week. The bombing continued. Another city fell. Then another. He was starting to lose hope when a signal appeared on his screen. It was a response to their beacon. He translated it with shaking hands. The message was simple. Help is coming. Hold on. He ran to Ambassador Lyra with the news. She read the message 3 times, afraid to believe it. "Who are they?" she asked. What species answered? Torvik checked the signal origin. He found a name in the header, a species identification. He had never heard of them before. The translation software gave him a word: humans. The planet of origin was listed as well: Earth. He searched the Valari database for information. There was nothing. Earth was not in any of their records. It was located in an uncharted sector, a region of space that had been marked as uninhabitable. "What does uninhabitable mean?" Lyra asked. Torvik pulled up the old survey data. His 4 eyes went wide as he read. It means their planet is a death world. Extreme temperature variations. Constant natural disasters. Predators everywhere. Diseases that evolve faster than medicine can cure them. Ambassador, according to this data, nothing intelligent should be able to survive on that planet. Lyra sat down heavily. And yet they answered our call. Yes. She looked out the window at the burning sky. What kind of beings survive a death world? Torvik had no answer. But deep in his chest, something that had been dead for 18 months began to stir. Hope. The Third Fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Valari system. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the sensors came alive. Commander Lee Suman stood at the tactical station aboard the Indomitable. She was 35 years old, a former mathematics professor who had found her true calling in military strategy. Numbers had always made sense to her. War, she had discovered, was just another kind of equation. She studied the data on her screen. Her face did not change, but her heart sank. "Admiral," she said calmly, "I count 217 Kreth warships, 42 battlecruisers, 90 destroyers, and 85 support vessels. They formed a complete blockade around the planet." Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood at the center of the bridge. He was 61 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had served in the Defense Force for 40 years. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. He had buried friends and raised children and grown old, wondering if peace would ever truly come. Now he looked at the enemy fleet and felt something strange. Not fear, not excitement, just a cold, quiet certainty. "Show me the planet," he ordered. The main screen changed to show Valara Prime. It was a beautiful world, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. But the surface was marked with dark spots, burned scars, dead cities. How many? Kim asked. Suman checked the data. Based on thermal readings, I estimate they've destroyed approximately 40% of the major population centers. Casualties are likely in the hundreds of millions. The bridge crew was silent. They had known what to expect. But knowing and seeing were different things. A communication signal came through. Kreth standard frequency. Admiral Kim nodded, and the message played. The voice that spoke was deep and harsh. Unknown vessels. You have entered Kreth Dominion space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose. Kim stepped forward. This is Admiral Kim Do-yoon of the United Earth Defense Force. We received a distress signal from the Valari people. We are here to help them. There was a pause. Then laughter. The Kreth commander was laughing. Help them? With 52 ships? We have conquered 47 species, human. We have destroyed civilizations older than your entire recorded history. Turn back now, and we will allow you to live. Stay, and you will join the Valari in extinction. Kim said nothing. He simply looked at his crew. Lieutenant Han Ji-woo sat at the weapons console on the destroyer Relentless. She listened to the Kreth commander's words through her earpiece. Her hands rested on the controls. Her targeting computer was already locked onto the nearest enemy ship. She thought about her brother. He had been a medic on Mars, trying to save lives during the insurrection. A stray shot had taken him. He had been 23 years old. He had wanted to be a teacher. The Kreth liked to bomb civilians. They liked to laugh at weakness. They had never met a species that grew stronger from pain. Captain Park Yuna stood on the bridge of the Relentless. She watched her crew. They were ready. She could see it in their eyes, in the way they held themselves, in the quiet focus that had replaced their earlier fear. All stations report, she ordered. Weapons ready. Shields ready. Engines ready. Medical bay standing by. Yuna nodded. Then, we wait for the Admiral's order. On the Indomitable, Admiral Kim looked at the Kreth fleet one more time. 217 ships. His fleet had 52. The math was simple. The outcome should have been obvious, but Kim had studied history. He knew that math did not always decide battles. He knew that will, courage, and conviction could change equations that seemed impossible. He opened a channel to his entire fleet. His voice was calm and steady. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. You heard the enemy. They expect us to run. They expect us to be afraid. They've never lost a war. They've conquered species across the galaxy. They think they know what we are. He paused. They are wrong. We are human. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for 1,000,000 years. We survived ice ages, plagues, earthquakes, and each other. We are the children of survivors. We do not run. We do not surrender. And we do not abandon the innocent to die. He took a breath. Battle formation, Alpha. Weapons free. Across the fleet, orders were given. Shields activated. Weapons powered up. Engines roared to life. The Kreth commander watched his sensors with confusion. The humans were not retreating. They were forming an attack pattern. This was insane. This was suicide. No rational species would attack a force 4 times their size. He opened a channel. Humans, this is your final warning. Turn back now or be destroyed. Admiral Kim's response was simple. You bombed their cities. You killed their children. And now you threaten us. His voice dropped to something cold and hard. We don't negotiate with murderers. Lieutenant Han Ji-woo pressed the firing button. The first volley erupted from the Relentless, a dozen missiles streaking toward the nearest Kreth cruiser. Across the human fleet, 200 weapons fired at once. The Kreth cruiser tried to evade. It was too slow. The missiles struck its shields, then its hull, then its reactor. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. 12 Kreth ships were destroyed in 90 seconds. The Kreth commander stared at his screen. This was impossible. These crude, ugly human ships should not have weapons this powerful. They should not be this fast. They should not be attacking with this kind of coordination. All ships engage. He screamed. Destroy them all. The battle began. On Valara Prime, Torvik watched the sensors in the underground bunker. He saw the human fleet appear. He saw the Kreth move to engage. He saw explosions, so many explosions. What's happening? Ambassador Lyra asked. Her voice was thin with fear. Are they being destroyed? Torvik studied the data. His hands trembled. No, he said slowly. Ambassador, the humans are winning. Lyra came to look at the screen. She saw the human ships dancing through the Kreth formation, firing again and again. She saw Kreth vessels explode one after another. She saw the blockade beginning to break. That's impossible, she whispered. They have 50 ships. The Kreth have over 200. I know. They watched in silence as the impossible continued to happen. As the humans fought with a ferocity the Valari had never imagined. As the galaxy's greatest military power began, for the first time in its history, to lose, Lyra sat down. Her 4 eyes were wide. What are they? Torvik remembered the survey data. Deathworld. A planet where everything wanted to kill you. A planet that should not have produced intelligent life at all. They are survivors, he said quietly. And now, perhaps, so are we. Outside, the sky still burned with the light of destroyed cities. But now there was new light too, the light of battle in orbit. The light of hope. The humans had come. The battle had raged for 11 hours. The stars had disappeared behind clouds of debris and fire. Ships moved through the chaos like sharks in bloody water, hunting and killing and dying. Marine Sergeant Chomin-Yuk led his squad through the corridors of a crippled Kreth command ship. There were 12 of them, 12 humans in heavy armor, carrying weapons that seemed small compared to the ship around them. The Kreth had built their vessels for beings much larger than humans. The ceilings were 3 meters high. The doorways were wide enough for trucks. It made Minyuk feel like a child exploring a giant's castle. Contact ahead, whispered Private Kang Yeji from the front of the formation. She was the youngest in the squad, barely 20 years old. Her hands were steady on her rifle. She had been born in Bizen, raised in an orphanage, and joined the military because she had nowhere else to go. Now, she was first through the door on an alien ship millions of kilometers from home. Minyuk moved up beside her. He could see them now, 4 Kreth soldiers at the end of the corridor, their weapons raised. They were massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Each arm held a weapon. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. They've seen us, Yeji said. Then we move fast. Everyone go. The squad charged. The Kreth opened fire. Energy beams filled the corridor, bright and burning. Private Jang Tiemann took a shot to the chest and went down. Private Ominji took a hit to the leg but kept running. Kept firing. Kept fighting. Minyuk felt something hit his side. Pain exploded through his body. He ignored it. He had learned to ignore pain a long time ago. He had grown up in the mountains of Gangwon, where winters killed the weak and summers brought floods. He had learned that pain was just information. It told you something was wrong. It did not tell you to stop. He reached the first Kreth soldier and drove his combat knife into the gap between its armor plates. The creature screamed a horrible sound, like metal tearing. Its forearms grabbed at him, crushing his ribs. He felt something crack. He stabbed again and again until the creature fell. When the fight was over, 3 Kreth lay dead. 2 of Minyuk's squad were wounded. He was bleeding from a wound in his side that he refused to look at. "Move," he ordered. "The bridge is 2 levels up." They moved. Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The fleet had lost 11 ships. The Kreth had lost 94. The numbers were good. But numbers did not tell the whole story. Commander Lee Sumin approached him. Her uniform was stained with smoke, and there was a cut on her forehead that she had not bothered to treat. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Kreth fleet commander. Put it through." The screen flickered, and the Kreth commander appeared. He looked different now. His yellow eyes were wide with something Kim recognized. It was fear. "Human," the commander said. "What are you? We have killed hundreds of your soldiers. We have destroyed your ships, yet you do not retreat. You do not surrender. You keep fighting. Why?" Kim looked at the alien for a long moment. Then he spoke. "You asked what we are. I will tell you. We are from Earth, a death world. Do you know what that means?" The commander said nothing. "It means our planet tried to kill us every single day. We faced predators with claws and teeth. We faced diseases that killed millions. We faced earthquakes that destroyed cities, floods that drowned nations, ice ages that covered the world. And through all of it, we survived. We adapted. We grew stronger." He stepped closer to the screen. "You think you understand war. You conquered species that had known only peace. You attacked civilizations that had never learned to fight. You are predators who hunt prey." His voice dropped. "We are not prey. We are the apex predator of a world that was trying to kill us for 1,000,000 years. And you made a mistake. You bombed civilians. You killed children. You laughed at suffering." He pointed at the commander. "Now you will learn what happens when you make humans angry." The transmission ended. In the medical bay of the Relentless, Chief Medical Officer Baek Yoonji worked without rest. She had been awake for 20 hours. Her hands were steady despite the exhaustion. She had been trained for this, not just the medicine, but the endurance. Doctors on Earth learned to work through disasters, through plagues, through wars. They learned that sleep was a luxury and lives were precious. A young ensign was brought in. His name was Park Jun-ho. He was missing his left arm below the elbow. The wound had been cauterized by an energy weapon, which had probably saved his life. He was conscious, pale, and surprisingly calm. "Doc," he said as Yoonji examined him, "when can I get back to my station?" She stared at him. "Ensign, you just lost an arm. I still have one left, and my legs work fine. The weapons console only needs one hand." Yoonji had heard stories about human determination. She had read studies about adrenaline and shock and the strange things people could do in crisis situations. But she had never seen it this clearly before. "Let me stabilize you first," she said. "Then we'll talk about your station." Jun-ho nodded and lay back. "Just hurry, Doc. The captain needs me." On the planet below, Torvik received reports from the surface sensors. The Valari military, what remained of it, was monitoring the battle with growing disbelief. "They should be dead," said General Vorish, an old soldier who had never seen actual combat until the Kreth arrived. "The mathematics do not support their survival. How are they still fighting?" Torvik had spent the last several hours researching everything he could find about humans. He had found old survey data, fragmentary reports, and a few scientific papers about Deathworld evolution. What he learned had terrified him. "General," he said slowly, "I believe I understand now. Humans did not evolve like us. They evolved in constant competition with their environment, with predators, and with each other. They developed something we do not have. They call it determination." Determination? The refusal to accept defeat. The willingness to keep fighting even when victory seems impossible, even when death seems certain. For us, surrender is logical when the odds are hopeless. For them, he paused. For them, there is no such thing as hopeless. General Voresh looked at the battle on the screen. Human ships, outnumbered and outgunned, were still advancing, still fighting, still winning. What have we summoned? He whispered. Ambassador Lyra stood beside him. Her eyes were fixed on the explosions in orbit, the beautiful, terrible dance of destruction that meant her people might survive. We summoned hope, she said. We just did not know what form it would take. In the corridors of the Kreth command ship, Sergeant Chomin-Yuk finally reached the bridge. His squad had lost 2 more on the way. He had 3 broken ribs, a wound in his side that would not stop bleeding, and a dislocated shoulder that he had popped back into place himself. He was still moving. He was still fighting, because that was what humans did. Hour 16. The Kreth had lost half their fleet. Fleet Commander Varth stood on the bridge of his flagship and tried to understand what was happening. He had commanded military forces for 30 years. He had conquered 12 species personally. He had never experienced anything like this. His officers were panicking. He could see it in their eyes, in the way they moved, in the trembling of their 4 hands. They had grown up hearing stories of Kreth invincibility. They had been taught that their species was the ultimate predator in the galaxy. Now, they were watching that belief burn. Commander, one of his officers said, we've lost another 12 ships in the last hour. At this rate, we will be completely destroyed within. I know the mathematics, Varth snapped. I can see the numbers. He stared at the tactical display. The human fleet had lost 19 ships. They should have been crippled. They should have been running. Instead, they were advancing, pressing their advantage, fighting with a fury that seemed to grow stronger with every loss. Varth had studied warfare his entire life. He knew that most species broke when their casualties reached a certain point. They retreated, surrendered, or simply stopped fighting. The survival instinct took over. Self-preservation was a universal law. Humans, apparently, had not received that message. All ships, Varth ordered, concentrate fire on the human flagship. Kill their leader. The rest will scatter. It was a desperate gamble, but it had worked before against other species. Cut off the head, and the body died. 300 fighters launched from the remaining Kreth carriers. They swarmed toward the Indomitable like insects toward a light. Point defense systems on the human flagship came alive, filling space with fire. Fighters exploded by the dozen, but more kept coming. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched the swarm approach. His ship shook as the first hits landed. Alarms screamed. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach on Deck 7. Fire in Engineering Section 3. We've lost forward shields. Navigation Officer Yoon Soo-jin sat at her console, hands moving across the controls with practiced speed. She was bleeding from a cut on her temple where flying debris had struck her. The console in front of her was sparking, half the displays dead. She ignored all of it. Admiral, she said, I can get us through. Kim looked at her. Through what? Through them. The enemy formation has a weak point at coordinate 773. If we push hard enough, we can break their line. That would require us to fly directly into their fire. Yes, sir. Kim studied the display. Soo-jin was right. There was a gap, small, dangerous, but real. If they could punch through, they could split the Kreth fleet in 2. It would end the battle. It would also likely destroy the Indomitable. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Prepare for ramming speed. We're going through. On the Relentless, Captain Park Yuna heard the order. She understood immediately. The Admiral was going to sacrifice his ship to break the enemy line. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was exactly what she would have done. She turned to her crew. They were battered, exhausted, running on nothing but determination. But they were still here, still fighting. "You heard the Admiral," she said. "Follow the flagship. Wedge formation." We punched through together. Lieutenant Han Ji-woo looked up from her weapons console. "Captain, the odds are irrelevant," Ye said. "The Admiral is leading the charge. We follow. That's how this works." Ji-woo nodded slowly. Then she turned back to her console and began targeting the enemy ships in their path. The Indomitable accelerated. The Kreth fighters swarmed around it, firing everything they had. The shields failed completely. The hull began to buckle. Explosions ripped through the ship, killing crew members, destroying systems, turning corridors into infernos. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge, surrounded by chaos. Half his crew was dead or wounded. The ship was dying around him. He did not move. He did not show fear. He simply watched the gap in the enemy line grow closer. "All hands," he said calmly. "Brace for impact." Fleet Commander Vorath watched the human flagship charge toward his line. He could not believe what he was seeing. No species flew a capital ship like a missile. No species threw away their most valuable asset in a suicidal charge. This was not war. This was madness. "They're not stopping," one of his officers said, voice rising in panic. "Commander, they're not stopping. Fire everything. Destroy them." Every Kreth ship in range opened fire on the Indomitable. The human flagship should have been vaporized. It should have been reduced to atoms. Instead, it kept coming, trailing fire and smoke, its engines screaming with power that should have been impossible. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet followed. 40 ships in tight formation, punching through the storm of fire like a fist through glass dot. The Indomitable struck the first Kreth ship in its path. The collision was spectacular. 2 massive vessels crashing together in a ball of fire and metal. The Kreth ship was destroyed instantly. The Indomitable broke through, its hull torn open, its systems failing, but still moving, still fighting. The wedge of human ships followed through the gap. They fired as they flew, destroying everything in their path. The Kreth formation shattered. Vorath watched his fleet fall apart. Ships were scattering, fleeing in every direction. The discipline that had carried the Dominion to 47 victories was gone, replaced by pure animal terror. He had seen this before in the species he conquered. He had seen the moment when hope died and fear took over. He had caused that moment 1,000 times. Now he was experiencing it himself. "Commander," his first officer said, "what are your orders?" Vorath looked at the human fleet. They were damaged, bleeding, dying, but they were still advancing, still fighting. They would not stop until every Kreth ship was destroyed. He understood now what they were. Not just Deathworlders, not just survivors. They were something worse. They were beings who had looked at the universe and decided that they would never, ever give up. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, no matter what stood in their way. The Kreth had built an empire on the terror they inspired in others. But terror only worked on those who feared death more than defeat. Humans did not. "Retreat," Vorath ordered. His voice was hollow. "All ships retreat to FTL, now." The Kreth fleet ran. They fled toward the edge of the system, desperate to escape before the humans caught them. Some ships made it. Many did not. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kim watched the enemy run. His ship was barely functional. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Most of his bridge crew was dead, but he was smiling. "Get me a count," he said to Suman, who was somehow still alive at her station. "How many of them escaped?" She checked her displays. 41 ships, sir. Out of 217. Kim nodded. And how many did we lose? 19, sir. He closed his eyes for a moment. 19 ships. Thousands of lives. Friends, colleagues, heroes. They had paid a terrible price, but they had won. He opened a channel to the planet below. Valari Command, this is Admiral Kim Do-yoon of the United Earth Defense Force. The blockade is broken. The Kreth are retreating. You are free. For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through thin, trembling, full of emotions that Kim could not fully understand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was enough. The Kreth Dominion was gone. Their ships had fled into the darkness of space, leaving behind the wreckage of their ambitions. The blockade that had strangled Valara Prime for 18 months had been shattered in less than a day. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood on the damaged bridge of the Indomitable and looked at what remained of his fleet. 33 ships still flew. 19 were gone, forever destroyed, crippled, or burned to nothing in the fury of battle. Over 4,000 humans had died. He did not celebrate. Begin search and rescue, he ordered. Human and Kreth survivors. Pick them all up. Commander Lee Suman looked at him with surprise. Sir, the Kreth survivors? They are defeated. They are not our enemies anymore. They are just soldiers who lost a war. Kim's voice was tired but firm. We do not leave anyone to die in space. That is not who we are. The rescue operations began. Human shuttles moved through the debris fields, picking up survivors from destroyed ships, humans and Kreth alike. Medical teams worked around the clock, treating wounds regardless of species. The Kreth prisoners were confused at first. They expected execution, or at least cruelty. Instead, they received food, water, and medical care. They did not understand these humans at all. On the surface of Valara Prime, Ambassador Lyra stood at the ruins of the capital city's main spaceport. Most of the buildings had been destroyed in the bombardment. The ground was still warm from the fires. But the sky was clear now. The dark shapes of Kreth warships no longer blocked the stars. A human shuttle descended through the atmosphere. It landed smoothly on the cracked pavement, and the doors opened. Ambassador Lyra held her breath, wondering what would emerge. She expected warriors. She expected soldiers in battle armor, carrying weapons, ready to claim their prize. The humans had just defeated the greatest military power in the galaxy. Surely they would demand payment, territory, resources, submission. Instead, a woman stepped out. She wore a simple medical uniform, and her face was lined with exhaustion. Her hair was tied back, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she had not slept in days. I am Dr. Shin Hyung, she said. United Earth Medical Corps. We've brought supplies, food, water purification systems, medical equipment, construction materials. She paused, looking at the destruction around her. I'm sorry it took us so long. What do you need first? Lyra could not speak. She had prepared speeches for conquerors, for overlords, for beings who would demand her people's gratitude and their freedom. She had no speech prepared for this. She struggled to find words. You just destroyed a fleet. You lost thousands of soldiers. And you're asking what we need? Hyung smiled a small, tired smile. Of course. That's why we came. Behind her, more humans emerged from the shuttle. They carried boxes of supplies, medical kits, tools. They moved with purpose and efficiency, spreading out to begin their work. None of them carried weapons. None of them made demands. In the ruins of a nearby building, young Torvik watched the humans work. He had spent the past 18 months hiding in bunkers, watching his world burn. He had lost friends, family, everything he knew. When the distress signal went out, he had not truly believed anyone would answer. Now he saw humans, these strange, Terrifying, impossible beings from a Deathworld treating Valari wounded, sharing food with hungry children, helping clear rubble from collapsed buildings. They worked alongside his people as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He approached one of the human soldiers, the Marine sergeant he had seen in the reports, the one who had led the boarding action against the Kreth command ship. The man was helping move heavy debris despite the bandages wrapped around his torso and arm. His name, Torvik had learned, was Chominyuk. "Excuse me," Torvik said carefully. The translator device in his ear made the words understandable. "May I ask you something?" Minyuk set down the piece of metal he was carrying and turned to face the young Valari. Up close, he looked even more damaged than Torvik had realized. But his eyes were kind. "Sure. What's on your mind?" "Why?" Torvik asked. The question had been burning in him for hours. "Why did you come?" "We have nothing to offer you. We are a small species with no military power, no valuable resources. The Kreth were your enemies' enemies. You could have let them destroy us and then fought them when they were weakened. It would have been the logical choice." Minyuk was quiet for a moment. He looked around at the ruined city, at the Valari refugees emerging from their hiding places, at the human medical teams treating the wounded. "Where I grew up," he said slowly, "there was a saying. My grandmother used to tell me, when you see someone who needs help, you help them. You don't ask what you'll get in return. You don't calculate whether it's worth your time. You just help." He shrugged, wincing slightly at the pain in his ribs. "You sent out a distress call. People were dying. Children were being bombed. That was enough reason for us to come. We don't need anything else." Torvik stared at him. In his entire life, he had never encountered a species that thought this way. The galaxy operated on exchanges, on mutual benefit, on careful calculations of advantage. The idea that someone would cross 6,000 light years just to help. Strangers, just because those strangers were suffering, was so foreign that he almost could not process it. "You are very strange," he said finally. Minyuk laughed. "Yeah, we get that a lot." On the other side of the city, Captain Park Yuna stood with Admiral Kim, surveying the damage. The Relentless was in orbit, undergoing repairs. Her crew had been given a few hours of rest, but most of them had volunteered for ground duty instead. They wanted to help. "The Kreth will come back," Yuna said. "Not immediately, but eventually. They won't forget this defeat." Kim nodded. "I know. We'll need to establish a permanent presence here. Defense stations, warning systems, perhaps a small fleet. Will Earth agree to that?" "They will." Kim smiled slightly. "We didn't come this far to abandon these people now." Yuna looked at the Valari refugees moving through the streets. They were beginning to emerge from their bunkers, blinking in the sunlight, staring at the humans with a mixture of awe and confusion. Some of them were crying. Some of them were laughing. Most of them simply stood in silence, unable to believe that the nightmare was over. "We saved them," she said quietly. "Yes. And we lost a lot of good people doing it." "Yes." Kim's voice was soft. "That's the cost. It's always the cost." They stood in silence for a moment, remembering the dead. Then Kim straightened his shoulders. "Come on. There's work to do." Ambassador Lyra found Dr. Shin Hyung in a makeshift medical tent, treating a Valari child with burns on her arms. Hyung worked with gentle, practiced hands, speaking softly to the child, even though the translator could barely keep up. "Doctor," Lyra said, "may I speak with you?" Hyung finished applying the bandage and looked up. "Of course. I need to understand something. Your species, humans, you come from a death world. You evolved in an environment of constant danger. You developed the ability to fight, to kill, to survive against impossible odds. We saw that in the battle." Hyung nodded, waiting. But now you are gentle. You heal instead of harm. You give instead of take. How can both things be true? Hyun was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on a supply crate, looking tired but thoughtful. Because survival isn't just about fighting, she said. On Earth, we learned that the hard way. We fought each other for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I can count. But we also learned to help each other, to build communities, to care for the weak and the sick. The same determination that makes us dangerous in war is what makes us stubborn in peace. We don't give up on anything, not battles and not people. She gestured at the medical tent, at the human volunteers working alongside Valari healers. This is who we are. The warriors and the healers. The fighters and the builders. You can't have one without the other. Lyra looked at the child Hyun had been treating. The little girl was smiling now, her bandaged arms wrapped around a human soldier who had given her a chocolate bar from his rations. I sent a message into the void, Lyra said quietly. I hoped for mercy. I prayed for salvation. She looked back at Hyun. I did not expect you, but I am grateful. We all are. The Valari will remember this day forever. We will tell our children, and their children, and their children after that. We will tell them that when we faced extinction, help came from the stars. Help came from Earth. Help came from humans. Hyun smiled a warm, genuine smile. Just try to pass it on someday. If you ever find someone who needs help, don't ask what they can offer you. Just help. Lyra nodded slowly. We will. I promise. Outside the tent, the sun was setting over the ruins of the capital city. It painted the sky in shades of orange and red, colors that reminded everyone of fire and destruction. But now there was something else in that sky. Human ships orbiting peacefully, protecting a world that was not their own. The Valari had sent a distress call into the void, hoping for aid. The void had sent back something unexpected, something terrifying, something wonderful. The void had sent humanity, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again.